Yeah, listen, my entire life, my dream has been to play professional soccer, and this kind of sprung on me really quick, especially with the new rule change, as you mentioned. I'd love to start my career at Atlanta United. I think the academy is great. I think the second team is great. And I think the first team environment is phenomenal. So, I'm so ecstatic that they selected me in the draft at the 19th pick. And, I'd love to start my professional career, at Atlanta United.
That was Jayden Hibbert from UConn goalkeeper, one of three Atlanta United draft picks on Tuesday. This is Carson Spike, Sydney, and Tyler with you, along with a special guest from Dirty South Soccer, Mr. Gray Gowder. Gray, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, guys. It's feels good to be done with the 2024 SuperDraft. That was a lot of coverage this year.
Yes, it was. It feels like it went on. Feels like it went on forever, but we're finally done. We're finally at the back end. So, yeah, let's dive right in. So, as I said, 3 picks for Atlanta United. I mentioned the first one already, 19th overall pick, Jayden Hibbert. Second round pick, 48th pick overall, Javier Armas from Oregon State. And then in the third round, Atlanta United selecting another goalkeeper, Casper Mols from Kentucky in the, not the SEC, but Conference USA. They do not play men's soccer in the SEC. Just a little tidbit for those of you that did not know. But yeah, great. Let's kind of start from the top. Jayden Hibbert, keeper, University of Connecticut, just wrapped up his sophomore year up at UConn. Initial thoughts about what you saw, what the pick means to you?
He's a really impressive young guy. I love talking to him in that press conference, and you can just see the charisma and the confidence that comes from him in that. I love that he says that Tim Howard is who he wanted to be when he was growing up, because
Yeah.
and he also talks about his Jamaican roots and wanting to emulate Andre Blake's path as well. I mean, you can really see that quick reflex kind of style keeper who feels very, very comfortable with the ball at his feet. And he seems to be really excited to get going. I know we're still waiting to see which of these guys commit to coming to camp or going back for another year of school. But, basically in the moment, he was saying he's ready to go. He's ready to fight for a spot on this team and to learn everything he can from Cohen and Westberg and Guzan, just to soak it up and hopefully get his chance in 2025 or 2026. And I believe he's someone who could do that based on what we've seen from this last season.
Before we go, I got to correct myself on Kentucky, and we'll get back to Hibbert in a second, but Kentucky, actually in the Sun Belt, not the SEC, or not Conference USA as we were before. They're now the Sun Belt, so I got to correct myself, correct the record on that. But, yeah, going back to Hibbert, Tyler, I guess what are your thoughts when you saw the pick?
It wasn't so much the pick for me as it was you guys talking about the press conference. I wasn't able to get in, but I've watched the video. I mean, it just ended not that long ago, but just a very sharp, articulate young man. And he seems to check all the right boxes of what you would want from a young guy coming in. Right.
Yeah.
I think he mentioned when talking about going and potentially, learning from Guzan and Cohen and Westberg, he said, honestly, I just want to just shut up and listen and learn, and yeah. I mean, that's what you want. Like you want the confidence. And I think he gives you the confidence that a goalkeeper hopefully needs. Right. But he also was eager to learn. And so I think that was my biggest thing. And yeah, I mean, whether he goes back for another year at UConn or not, I mean, this is such a weird off season for Atlanta. I wouldn't be mad either way. I mean, the twos are going to need somebody, right? You have some guys coming through the academy, but there's a lot of movement left to be done. But the first team we can see, it's pretty much set, right? I wouldn't be mad if he came to the twos, but I also wouldn't be mad for his own career, just to get that extra little bit, because he's going to be starting. He's going to be playing nonstop at UConn. So I don't think either choice is bad for him.
Yeah, definitely. The UConn move makes sense because Tyler kind of hit on it. He's going to be playing consistently, albeit at a collegiate level, but he'll be playing. But I think if Atlanta United do want to bring him in, there's credence to bring him in, to play with Atlanta United too. Get him in the system, get him developed, get him around Guzan, Westberg, Cohen, two veteran goalkeepers, very different stages in the career, a lot of experience behind them in different leagues, different playing environments. So I think that's their approach to either side, right? And Tyler, like you said, I wouldn't be mad with either result either. Just personally, he struck me as a very well-spoken young man. I'm very excited, as you guys were saying, to get with Atlanta. Has family in the area as well as in Savannah, so has been to Atlanta numerous times. Very familiar with it. But I think the Howard thing struck me too because 2016, obviously a big year for the United States men's national team, and Howard just having the heroic performance. And you're seeing the fruits of those seeds being planted in the minds of young men, young women in the soccer ranks. And Hibbert is looking to be one of those players who have grown from that. Tim Howard, obviously a name that everyone knows in the goalkeeping community, not just goalkeeping community, but U.S. soccer and world football as a whole. So very good role model to have, very good player to model yourself after. And yeah, I like it. I like it. It's a good move. And again, whether or not he comes back to or goes back to UConn or comes to Atlanta United and signs right off and plays with the twos, I'd be okay with either.
I got a question for you, Gray, because I know you've probably seen more footage of all these guys than pretty much anybody combined with Dirty South and everywhere else. He mentioned his confidence playing out of the back, and he mentioned how he was super comfortable with it. He played for a long time as a wingback, and all of his academy teams and everybody else like consistently wanted to play out of the back, so he's comfortable with it. But what have you seen in kind of your time watching him?
Well, in the best possible way, he's a Red Bull Academy product. I mean, you expect those guys to be highly technical. You expect them to be able to build out of the back, to be able to play smart football, to be able to play as a unit, to be able to implement that kind of press and defensive scheme that can control the ball, but can also stifle and switch the entire game in an instant. And he comes off as that kind of player who is extremely athletic, who's going to work extremely hard out there on the field, and is going to be there as part of a unit and not trying to play as an individual and do hero ball like we've seen in some other cases. And you can see that in his tape too. And it makes perfect sense when he was talking about what he's looking forward to and working with Cobb and Morales next year. It was not only what he is a college player who is ironically the same age as those two guys. He's probably 19 or 20 years old. Morales is about to turn 20. Cobb, I think, is 18, 17, 18, something like that. They're all the same age, but he sees himself as someone who is going to learn and grow with these young guys, and wants to make a priority of building that chemistry and that partnership, because he knows that he's going to look good if the two guys in front of him look good, and if that triangle can function, and if he can keep doing, like he said, he's been playing with the ball at his feet since he was 4, so he probably feels pretty comfortable with that said, and we'll be able to see a lot more of that when we get to the preseason and see some of the first opportunities that he has to play in Pineda and Steve Cook's scheme. But I don't think he'll have too big of a leap to make. Maybe reading the speed of the game might be something that he has to learn, but based on that Red Bull pedigree, I think he's going to be just fine.
Yeah. So that's Jayden Hibbert, Atlanta's first-round pick in the 2024 MLS SuperDraft. They're supposed to have one early on in the second round, but they traded it off for Gam and their early third-round pick for Gam.
With that monopoly money.
Exactly. So fast forward, 48th overall pick, and they take Javier Armas from Oregon State, Pac-12 guy, with the second round 19th pick. Gray, what's kind of your thoughts on Javier Armas? What you saw, Armas, senior. So, what's kind of what you've seen from him?
So most of my experience watching Armas was actually watching a couple of his freshman teammates from Atlanta's system. You have Andrew DeGanis, who played for the U19s and the twos for a while, and then you have everybody's favorite former Atlanta United prospect, Italo Jenkins, who is a forward there as well. DeGanis actually was in the draft. I don't think he was selected, but he played every match as a left back. So I was able to watch a bit of Armas in that same unit with him. Armas is a defense first player. The way Bocanegra described him, he can play either as a defensive midfield or as a fullback. I entirely expect the club to explore both of those opportunities in the preseason when he comes in. And when asked about his international status, because he came from the Spanish Academy of Corina, so has that pedigree, but he's also going to take up an international slot, whether he ends up with Next Pro or on the senior side. But that didn't seem to bother Carlos too much. He said that they're going to keep an open mind about him, and would be thrilled if he manages to fight his way onto the first team, either right out of preseason or after being a leader for a young twos team in 2024.
At this point, I mean, as a defensive midfielder, you almost expect like that competent. I mean, unless something drastic changes, and there's still plenty of time, right, to go find a veteran like number 6 or somebody. But I mean, we've talked about that position for so long now, and it's pretty empty in terms of guys that are just immediately going to make that leap. Like you have Jay Fortune, who I think is great, but you
That's
know,
it, pretty much.
Yeah, that's it. You have Muyumba who can play both 8 and 6, but you want him playing the 8, right? So like, it would be phenomenal if Javi could come in and just immediately step on the gas and also provide some competition to the guys on the twos.
Absolutely, yeah. You're going to have Aiden Torres in there as highly gifted but very, very young, homegrown at the 6. Torres can also play center back in the 8, so you'll see him moving around a lot in there, and they might expect Armas to basically be that primary competition, if not an example to him of what a European Academy pedigree player doing a similar role to what he's doing would look like in that case. And you've got some other really, really good players that are probably going to get their first shots with the Academy, like Haitian international Julian Veritas, who was phenomenal at the U17 tournament for CONCACAF. He's probably going to get his first shot as either a 6 or an 8. And then you've still got Alan Carlton down there on Tuesday deal. So you're going to have some really good young competition there scrapping in the midfield for the twos next year.
Yeah. Gonna be interesting to see what that position looks like in the next few years for Atlanta. And we should say first off, or before we move on, Javier Armas is not related to Chris Armas. At least not directly. At least not directly. And then that gets thrown around Atlanta United land a lot. So Javier Armas, 5th-year player out of Oregon State. Should turn professional for Atlanta United, right, and possibly play for the twos. So we'll see what comes of him. Final pick for Atlanta United in the SuperDraft, 2024 SuperDraft, is Casper Mols, who I mentioned, Kentucky and the Sun Belt Conference, really one of the top keepers in the Sun Belt. As a sophomore, listening to the Matt Kerman Trophy preseason watch list, pretty much the Heisman Trophy for college soccer, collegiate soccer, Defensive Player of the Year, preseason Defensive Player of the Year, and the SBC All-Conference Player. Just a very well-regarded keeper. And again, he's a sophomore, so still has time to go. Grace, is this a player that goes right back into college and gets some playing time underneath him before turning pro, or do you think he comes in right away?
Yeah, that's hard to say. Bocanegra seemed to believe that at least, development wise, he may be more advanced as a player than our first round pick, which is really interesting as an idea. And he was ascribing Mols' background from academies in Denmark as a big reason for that. And so I got to watch a little bit of him when freshman Joel Gonzalez was starting every game for Kentucky this year, and he had a phenomenal transition straight from the U19s out to Kentucky, and is one of those guys who is definitely in the running for a potential homegrown in the future for us, I think. But it'll be really interesting to see whether the club and the players, for that matter, feel that it's in their best interest to bring both of them into camp, have them both play for the twos, and then have the U17 and U15 aged keepers like Jansen and Skoglund and Ransom, and we just had a U15 who was called up to the U.S. U15s as well. So a lot of young talent down on the farm, but there is that window there where they might be a little younger than the club wants, at least to take on a larger role, but enough to see that these two college prospects could be a bridge for those guys reaching first team.
You mentioned academy experience with Denmark, or back home in Denmark. He also experienced with USL League Two. He played for SC Tucson, during as a freshman out there in Arizona, USL League Two. So that's another thing that he has in favor for him. Tyler, what are your thoughts on Mols?
Admittedly, I don't know a ton about him. Obviously, I think it's very interesting that the club is reaching so far in so many different directions. The kind of proverbial spider web, the reach that they've had, going out to different academies, going out to different parts of the world, bringing in talent from, not just the veteran talent, but the young talent. You've got the Spanish kind of influence here. We've seen in the SuperDraft, the Dutch influence, like things like that. It's very interesting to see, because it was a year ago that we were talking about how Atlanta is just so focused on one portion of the world, it seemed. So to have Garth come in, make these changes, and provide a vision for a guy like Carlos, who actually does pretty well going out finding talent. It's just a matter of, is it the right talent at the right time? Here we are, and they've hit on quite a few good players already. So I'm excited to see what they do here with the SuperDraft.
And that's such a great point about player identification as well, because when you're looking at profile, when you're looking at background for these guys, I think it's really interesting that the two main guys who are running this system, really the three, if you consider Jonathan Spector as being a key part of that as well, is we've got Lagerwey, who's a goalkeeper, and then you've got Spector and Bocanegra, who are central defenders and fullbacks at times as well. And you've got guys who have played at a high level in those positions, and so they know what to look for there. And when we're looking at Hibbert and Mols, I think you see two very different types of goalkeeper prospects who are equally as exciting. For Mols, he's probably a safer pick who might be a little bit closer to ceiling. But for Hibbert, you've got a guy who has a lot of room for growth. You have just freakish athleticism, and you've got a guy who could become our Andre Blake, or could become like one of these perennial all-stars who makes saves that you have no idea, how he got to that ball. But you need both of those guys. You need the really steady, solid 6'4" goalkeeper like Mols, but then you also need to have that athletic guy that lets you play differently, that lets you take chances, that lets you move the ball around at your feet, like Hibbert. And then having a player who is just no nonsense, is going to, double foot cleat you in practice potentially. I'm sure that's more of a Chris Armas kind of thing than Javier Armas, but we're guessing, like, since they've got the same last name, that might be the
why
case.
not?
Yeah, I mean, you need those kind of guys to build out the overall culture and the diversity of options that the coach will have. But the thing that's consistent across all of these guys is you look at, what's their background, what's their mentality, what's their makeup, and what do they look like on the field with their teammates when things are going well, but also when they're going poorly. And that's something that you'll notice a lot from watching our team is you can tell, at least from the homegrown players that we're bringing in, we're bringing really high quality people onto this team. You're bringing really smart kids. You're bringing kids with a great makeup, great demeanor, good support system, who are generally unfazed by playing against older, bigger, stronger, faster players. They're out there and they want to tear stuff up. And when they finally make it to the bins, it's not as overwhelming of an experience as it could be for someone who was that great player but was staying in their age group all the way up. And so I think that's the beauty of each of these guys that we drafted tonight, is that they can push these really, really young, talented players that we've got in the system, but they can also find their own role at the same time because they have that hunger. But they're not going to torpedo one of their teammates to get there.
Right. Yeah, so 3 very interesting draftees for Atlanta United during the Super Draft this time around, and interested to see what their career paths take from this point on. We got to hit on this real quick. So this season is official. We talked about the 2 draft picks that got traded for TAM. They're either the 72nd pick overall, traded for $50,000 in TAM. And then the big one, GAM, I'm sorry, GAM, not TAM. Yeah, GAM, not TAM. But then the big one, essentially confirmed by Carlos Bocanegra during his post-draft media availability. Garrison Tubbs traded to DC United, $125,000 in GAM, another $150,000 in add-ons. So Carlos said, the team is looking to make moves in the offseason. I feel like Tubbs is very interesting because they just signed him, of course, as a homegrown player. I assume it was just to protect him from the draft and to make sure that they get a good market value for him while they stockpile GAM. I think the same for the draft picks as well. So they make off with, I can't do the math, but make off with a pretty good amount of GAM. And of course, the Miguel Berry trade as well that helped them move up in the draft. So, just quick thoughts on that.
So we won't really know how good or bad the moves within the draft are going to be until we see what those resources are used for. I would say that I think we probably could have gotten more for that second round pick. We were seeing moves that other teams were doing that were bringing in more than that. And it would have been nice to see it at least tied to a pick next year, potentially to move out. But, that they seem to be prioritizing having that flexibility this year as far as finances go, a bit more than worrying about, whatever 2026 draft looks like. For Tubbs, I'm feeling, not so great about that move, honestly. Anybody who follows Dirty South Soccer knows how excited I've been about him for 4 years now.
Sorry, Gray.
He's a great player who I think could be an immediate Donovan Pines replacement for DC United. So I hope fans up there in the nation's capital are feeling pretty excited about hearing that. He's once again really quality human being who's a vocal leader on the field, and I think that was one of those things that excited me most about him coming to Atlanta, because we've talked about that for at least the last couple of years, how we haven't had that really vocal defensive captain or defensive leader back there. And usually guys just getting shouted over by Guzan, not as much, proactivity from that group. And that's nothing against the guys who are out there. They're, quality defenders in their own right. But I think it helps to have an organizer like a Parkhurst or like a Laurentowicz who can fill that role. I think a good kind of comparison of value, though, would be to look at what Austin FC got for Nate Jones, who was an early draft pick. He was one of the first. I think he was the first center back off the board, and at least in the write up that I did ahead of the draft, comparing him to Miles Robinson or Austin Trusty or other highly athletic center backs, but way better with his feet than those guys were. He's going to Colorado, where he could become another Austin Trusty. And Austin FC was able to get an early second-round pick and 250 GAM for him, for a guy who would have gone about the same range, if not a little bit after Garrison Tubbs if he'd entered the draft. So I kind of wonder if we could have done a bit better. If we were really just looking for resources, I wonder whether we could have, gotten a bit more funny money to work with a guy who could have immediately slotted in as a number 3 if Gregerson is the only one of the two who comes in, or if we have both Gregerson and Mensah come in, he'd be a great number 4 that would allow Cobb and Morales to start every day with the 2s and not have to worry about sitting on the bench as well. So I question that decision, and I worry about the short-term aspect of it, similarly to what we did with Campbell as well, because we saw a guy who may have been sitting on the bench, I guess might have been the mindset going into last year, and we're able to get a decent amount for him, and are probably going to get a lot more based on how much he played for Montreal. But at the same time, with Miles Robinson heading off, with the weirdness that we saw in the back line this year, and also not really knowing what we were going to get with Robinson coming off of an injury, it sure would have been nice to have that safety blanket of Campbell waiting in the wings to be able to step up. But that's just my 2 cents there, and it's probably why I don't work for the club. I'm writing for a fan site, but I'm excited to see what he's able to do with hopefully a regular opportunity to play, even though it might be for DC.
Yeah,
I think for me, it's abrupt, right? And you just have to hope that there's like some 4D chess going on, and you just got to look at the long-term implications, whatever they may be, because at this point, I mean, it seems kind of like a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other type move, because everybody knew he was going to be near the top. So could you have worked something out by not signing him first? I don't know. It's tough to say. But yeah, essentially you lock him down, homegrown contract. At least then you have the ability to go do what you want with him. And then you found a club that was willing to pay at least something. So, I mean, at this point, what could have been is done. And I hate it because I also felt like he was going to be a very good, I don't want to say the word stopgap, because I think he would have worked himself up to be a very solid, reliable center back for Atlanta United in a year or two, right? But he would have been the in-between, because right now the center back core is Luis Abraham and Noah Cobb, technically, but Noah Cobb and Ephraim Morales both need more time with the 2s. They don't need to be sitting on a bench. So then you could have had Tubbs, and then you go out and sign at least one more center back, and he would have been that third option. Now it just kind of changes that whole dynamic. And, it sucks, but also like, we don't even know what the repercussions are going to be. So now you have some more monopoly money to go play with. And you do have rumors coming in, like you said, Gray, that are solid. Like, they're good, good guys. Gregerson and Jonathan Mensah are both like solid options, I feel. So, it is what it is. I think the only thing that I'm sure is going to pop off on Twitter a little bit is the fact that it seems so abrupt for Tubbs as well. And you've got him going on like Twitter, liking, some of these like comments that that are, about him,
right.
that are not positive for the club.
Yeah.
So for him to like immediately be going on Twitter and like liking these things is a little, concerning, but at the end of the day, it's a business, right? So it is what it is.
And then you also have Vicente Reyes going on Twitter and
right.
scratching his head about
baseball emoji. Yeah.
That's a guy who a lot of us were hoping was going to be that next starter. We were hoping that we'd have that incredible young keeper who was starting for his national team in Chile, similarly to how Slonina and now Brady, and then you've got Revolution with a couple of great young keepers there. And we were thinking maybe that's us. And Columbus gets Schulte, who also came from the draft. So maybe we get lucky and have Hibbert become our Schulte in a couple of years.
Slonina, yeah.
But you've got to wonder what impact that has on the college players that we do still control the rights to, who are like Riley, Matthew Edwards, Nigel Prince, guys who are really, really quality players who will likely be going in the draft next year. And you've got Remy Okunlola, who just helped Clemson go win a championship. Yep. What happens with those guys when they see a guy who was supposed to be, the roadmap for getting back to Atlanta, for getting that homegrown deal, for becoming a regular on this team, and was presented as such around his signing as well. And then to see, less than a week go by before he's heading off. That, I don't know. I mean, I'm hoping that doesn't impact our ability to bring back really quality players in the future.
Yeah. So a busy day for Lady United. 3 draftees, a few trades, and a little different team makeup. Again, we'll be interested to see what the career path for all these 3 players goes, as well as Tubbs as he has to DC United. But Gray, really appreciate having you on today, and we'll hopefully have you back soon.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciated being here with you and being able to talk SuperDraft and Atlanta United stuff.
Absolutely.
Of course. Welcome back anytime.
Absolutely.